It is 8:32. I'll call this meeting to order. We're going to start our meeting with our invocation. Kaylee, will you lead us in invocation?
Yes, if you'd please bow your head, close your eyes. Thank you, Father God, for this beautiful day. Every day that you give us is a blessing and a miracle. Every day that you give this community the chance to be the best version of itself is beautiful. Thank you for the opportunities that you provide us. I ask that you guide us and lead us in all of the decisions that we make here today and all of the decisions that we make moving forward from this place. Thank you once again for your grace, your mercy. Thank you for this beautiful community, for the state of Texas, and for the United States of America. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Our first consent item, do we have a motion to approve the meetings from August 16th?
I'll make a motion to approve.
A motion from Tim. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Kyle. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Motion carries. Public hearing. The Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on the following item. Case number 2023-05V. Open a public hearing concerning the approval of the request of Filiberto Ayala, owner, for a variance from section 14-7-5 for the City of Odessa zoning ordinance to allow structure carport to be built 10 feet instead of the required 25 feet. Front yard building setback in a single-family 3 SF-3 zoning district, Lot 8, Block 18, Burnett Heights, Addition 3rd, filing 1504 Woodlawn Drive.
Good morning, thank you. We sent out notices, a total of 29 were sent, 0 were returned, 0 approved, and 0 protests. The property involved in this request is located at 1504 Woodlawn Drive. The site is currently zoned single-family 3 and is occupied by single-family residents. The property is surrounded by residential development to the north, south, east, and west. The applicant is Filiberto Ayala, owner, and the purpose of the request is for a variance to allow a structure carport to be built with a 10-foot front yard setback instead of the required 25 feet front yard setback. In order to allow the structure 15 feet forward on the 25-foot front yard setback, the applicants are requesting a variance from section 14-7-5 of the City of Odessa zoning ordinance. Staff analysis of this request is the applicant's request to reduce a front yard to 10 feet instead of the required 25 feet front yard setback will not create any hazards or hardships surrounding properties to light, air, open space. Should the board choose to approve this request, the planning staff would recommend adoption of the following conditions. No structures or additions may be placed within the 25-foot front yard setback, and the carport shall not be enclosed in the future. And I'm here for any questions.
Do we have any questions for the city? Okay, we close this portion. Now we open this portion to the public. Do you have anybody speaking for this variance? Do we have the owner? Please.
Buenos días.
Good morning.
Filiberto Ayala.
Good morning.
¿Usted está presentando su caso?
Sí.
How do we do? Does he speak English?
No. ¿Habla inglés usted?
Un poco.
¿Poquito?
Okay, dígame, señor, ¿por qué está presentando este caso? I've just asked him why he's presented this case.
Yo quería hacer un porchecito para un carro que tengo, porque está muy fuerte el sol y en veces cae granizo.
Maria, can you translate?
Yes. He's trying to build a porch-type carport for his vehicle, because sometimes it rains. There's a lot of sunlight that hits his vehicle, and sometimes we have hail.
Okay. ¿Algo más?
No, es todo.
Okay. Anybody wants to speak against this variance? Okay, gracias, señor.
Gracias.
Gracias. Okay, we're going to close this portion of the meeting. Board?
I'm good with it.
I have no objection to it.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Can we restate the motion?
Okay, yeah,
to
not a
state the as the recommendations from the city.
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation for the city to approve this variance for the, for case number 2023-05V.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any objection, everybody in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Motion carries. Case number 2023-06-V, open a public hearing to consider the approval request of REBD Trucking LLC owner for a variance from section 14-7-6K1 of the City of Odessa zoning ordinance to allow structure to be built at 0 front yard setback instead of the required 25 feet front yard building setback from section 14-7-92 to allow said structure to be located at 0 feet rear yard setback instead of the required 10 feet rear yard setback in light commercial LC zoning district, lot 1, block 1, College Edition, second filing, 1215 North Lee Avenue.
Thank you. The property involved in this request is located at 1215 North Lee Avenue. The site is currently zoned light commercial and is occupied by vacant land. Property is surrounded by residential development to the northwest and commercial development to the east and south. The applicant is Romeo Trevino, owner, REB Trucking, and the purpose of the request is for a variance to allow a combined office storage building to be built with a 0 feet front yard setback instead of the required 25 feet front yard setback, and 0 feet rear yard setback instead of the 10 feet rear yard setback. The applicant is requesting a variance from section 14-7-6K1 and 14-7-92 of the City of Odessa zoning ordinance. Staff analysis of this request is that there are no special conditions associated with the property that do not exist for others in the area, and no hardship exists that supports this request. The property was initially sold as an illegal lot of record. However, through prior management, it was agreed that the property would be replatted in order to convert to a legal lot and meet the current development standards. The applicant's request to reduce the front yard to 0 feet instead of the required 25 feet front yard setback will create issues related to light, air, and open space. Property is located in an intersection which might hinder visibility of traffic and is in close proximity to a single-family residence towards the rear of the property. Planning staff recommends reducing the size of the building to meet the development standards and as indicated in the zoning ordinance for front yard and rear yard setbacks. And I'm here for any questions.
Do we have any questions to
So,
staff?
was this replatted as a, as something?
It was currently a lot, however, it was sold by Meets and Bounds through prior direction and management. It was agreed upon to go ahead and replat. So they brought it in this year. We went ahead and processed it as a replat for only that area. It is a light commercial zoning district, which, under the requirements for replat, you have to meet the subdivision, the ordinance requirements for front yard, rear yard, and development standards. This is a light commercial zoning district, which does require 25 feet front yard setback, 10 feet in the rear. And since it's in the side street, it does require the 10 feet on the side street and 0 on the other side. However, they do meet the side street required setback, but the building, we did recommend to reduce it in size so they could continue meeting the requirements for the zoning ordinance.
What is the building meant to be used for?
It is meant to be used for a office storage building. They do have a business located across the street. It's a trucking business. They had an office there, but they're wanting to place the office in this location instead.
Is this going to be used as a repair shop of any kind or anything along those lines? Is that,
They didn't indicate a repair shop. They just said a storage or garage type for their vehicle, their personal vehicle.
personally?
Any other questions?
I've noticed there's some demo going on the site, so where are we at in the permit process? Or
The permit was submitted, but it was halted. We haven't approved it through planning.
So it hasn't been through all the departments yet for their
Has,
review and approval?
well, through the MGO software that we have online, permitting software, all departments can view the permit request. Planning, however, has not approved it. Building inspections hasn't approved it yet because it has to be approved by all departments first.
And the objection is because it will cause, related to light, air, open space, property, might hinder visibility, traffic, in close proximity.
Yes, because they're wanting to place it at the very front of at the property line of the lot. There is, like I mentioned, there is an intersection on 13th Street. It's on the intersection of 13th Street and North Lee. They do have their parking space towards the north of the property. However, they do want to move this building to the very property line to the front, facing North Lee. The size of the building, we did recommend to reduce it in size to meet the standards. They did not want to do that.
What would that put the size of the building?
The size of the building.
Right now, it's 40 by 60.
By reducing it, I would say possibly, I'm assuming maybe 20? No, by 40, perhaps?
And it looks like I see 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm assuming those are vehicles. Like within the
Yes.
building footprint. So
Yeah.
they're intending to park some cars or vehicles in this
Yes.
building as well as utilize it as an office space?
It was
So-
initially mentioned to me that it was for one vehicle, but I'm assuming they're placing more than one.
So, one other question I've got here is it shows an existing driveway. That is, in the front of this is set directly at the property line. Are we okay on side yard setback? Are they trying to set closer to the side yard as well?
The side yard on light commercial zoning district, the inner side yard requires, because it's light commercial and there's another building, commercial building next to it, it doesn't require a setback. It's 0 setback on the inner side yard. On the street side yard requires 10 feet.
Would there be hardship if the entire building was shifted to the setback of what it is? It doesn't look like they're gonna have as big of a backyard area to this, I guess, as it were with this, but it does look like that whole building could actually shift back without much of a problem, without having to even reduce the size of the building. Is that correct?
They could move it back. However, there is a residence behind that building or that lot. And so we trying to minimize any type of, what's it called? Emergency or any type of situation where in an emergency scenario, any fire would cause any hazard to that building, to that residence.
Okay, is that gonna be closer towards the light commercial, or is that building closer towards the street?
Excuse
Is
me.
that closer towards 13th Street, or is that closer towards the property that's next door?
It would be closer to the property, to the rear property. And I have somebody here that's representing this case.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mayor. We open the portion of the meeting to the public. Anybody that wants to speak for?
Walking a little. Morning, board members. My name is Norberto Brito. I'm representing my client, Mr. Trevino. I'm with N3 Brito LLC. And so let's get started because it's going to be a little bit long explanation here. First thing I'd like to say is just give a little history on this lot. Originally what happened is this lot's been sold. Oh, this is the third person that's bought it, and I've spoken to each one of them, and the issues have been here on this lot. So initially, the lot was sold by Meets and Bound by the original owner. The original owner, he lives back here. Well, don't have a pointer, but he lives on the backside, and he was the original owner of the whole lot. So just a little history, back when they first approached me, a couple approached me and said, hey, we'd like to build a residence here on this lot. So they purchased the lot off of the individual, the original owner. Then they were told the same thing, that they couldn't do anything there because of the way the lot was and the size of it. So we told them, look, we'd have to replat the lot to get it to the minimum square footages. And so they decided to let it go, and then they sold it to another person. The next person was a developer. He did the same thing. He wanted to put a residence there, went through the whole process. They got the residential plans. It went through all the building reviews and ready for permitting. And then it went to planning, and again, at the planning stage, they said, hey, it needs to be replatted. So he said, okay, I'll go ahead and replat it. So he approached me to get replatted. But prior to that, through that whole process, they hired us to do the water and sewer extension. So we did all those plans. Water and sewer plans were approved by engineering. We met all the requirements there. When it came to the replat time, that developer decided, you know what, I'm not going to build the water and sewer because I don't want to pay to have it replatted. So then he sold the property to who is my client now, REBD. So we informed REBD, look, there's issues with the lots. Initially, first of all, it really didn't need to be replatted because it was already an established lot by meets and bounds. The city had already given it an address, which is 1215 North Lee. The lot was there, but we went ahead and agreed, okay, fine, we'll do the replat. Well, let's back up one more. I'm getting ahead of myself. Did the building plans for his building, submitted them for permit. Before that, he went ahead and we reopened the water and sewer. My client, he went ahead and constructed the water and the sewer, so he extended the sewer to the lot. He crossed the water over to the lot, so the lot has water and sewer for it. So then we went through the building process, and then again came upon, said, hey, it needs to be replatted. So we said, okay, we'll go ahead and go through that process. So we went through that whole process, had the lot replatted. Initially in the replat, the request was to fix the whole area, which that was overdue burden. And so planning agreed at the time to go ahead and just let us replat his lot, which his lot meets minimum requirements, 5,000 square foot. It did leave the back lot, by itself on that residential, which in the future, nothing can be done with that one. And that was understood at the time. We met all the requirements on the replat, got it through the process, and did that. We had submitted building plans, which they were already in the mix before the replat, so they've been sitting there way back whenever we originally submitted for building permit. So got through that, and then thought we were going to be able to go ahead and move forward and have the permit, which he was told that, yes, as soon as the replat goes through, we'll release it for your permit so you can start building the structure. My client has already bought the building, so the building's been sitting at another yard, way prior to. And the building is, if we're looking at it, it's a 2,400 square foot building. So we meet all the requirements on the site too, as far as it not exceeding, lot coverage. It's not more than 50% of the lot. So we're meeting all of those requirements. So now let's get into the meat of this thing on the site. So I guess planning is one of their deals, and I hope I'm going to cover all of it. But let's go to the site. And initially, even the back lot has an address. The back lot's address is 211 West 13th. So both lots had already been addressed previously as separate properties. We are in a light commercial, as stated. We do back up to a residential district to the west of us, but our property, which is up on the front, doesn't back up to that residential. The lot behind us, which is 211 West 13th, is the one that actually backs up to the residential district, and they're separated by an alley. And that'll be a little bit here important based off of city ordinance. From there, the original plat did not have any predefined cutbacks, setbacks, or anything like that, which we understand you still have to follow the ordinance if there are some setbacks and stuff, even if they're not shown on the plat. Our plat here I have this one that was recorded. I don't think if she showed it there or not, but I can pass it around. That's the recorded plat that we went through the process to have the lot created the way it was created. And then, like I said, the water and sewer plans, I do have them here, which we established, and you can see on the site plan up there, the sewer came from the alley. We were required to put a new manhole, there, which, you know, based on development, the developer has to incur all those costs to do that. The city doesn't participate. Sewer was put right there in the right-of-way, city right-of-way, in between property line and back of curb, which was great, worked out good. The water is coming up here from closer to the intersection of 13th and North Lee, which was located in the street. So we crossed the street with it and extended the water over to the lot up there at the northeast corner. So we have that. So then in designing this out and placing the building on the property, we are requesting that per the ordinance. Let's go ahead and do that one first. So reading through the ordinance, you know, you guys have read it, but the way it says in 1476K, special front yard regulations, you know, in the MCR R1 LC, which is what we are, is the light commercial, HC, CB2, L1, and H1 districts, a minimum 25-foot yard is required for all non-residential structures. So this is a non-residential structure. But the next continued use there is it says uses except where provision is made for adequate site design by addressing traffic circulation, parking, visual clearance, and surrounding development of an adopted site plan. And so that's what we're presenting here is we're not creating any adverse effects to site, to air, to visual, to circulation, to any of that. And so based on the site plan, if you look at it, back of curb, the street has been established, back of curb is already existing, so we're not moving any of that. So on the north side, back of curb, we're already, I didn't have my dimension here. That's what I promised. We were already, to our property line, we're already 7 foot from back of curb to our property line. And then additionally to the building, we went ahead, since we have parking on that side, we had to meet another 18 feet inside our property, so all our cars could park on that side over there. So from back of curb, we're already 28 feet, you know, from back of curb, which is adequate room for visual. We're not obstructing anything on that side. And then on the east side of the equation over here, from back of curb, we're already, we're already 20 foot to our property line. And then we went ahead, even though we're requesting the 0 setback on that line, we put our building 5 foot in anyways, just to stay off of our property line up there on the east side. So we're 25 foot already from the back of curb, which I know the ordinance states that you need to be 25 foot, you know, on the interior side of it if you're doing the building setbacks. But as site design, we're not impairing anything visually on that intersection or in that corner. There is, as stated before, an existing driveway that we didn't create, so there was a structure way back when that just disappeared, but that existing driveway was there. And it, you know, it's already there. We're not creating an additional curb cut. On the north side of our property, the curb cut was already, it was a lay down curb on that side, so we're not even creating an adverse condition on the north side because it was used for parking, initially on that end to get into and have access to the lot. So option number one, which we're looking at, is we'd like to have the variance let us place our building where we're at. For two things, is the building has already been ordered, so there's no way we'd like to modify that because it's already been paid and it's sitting on another site just ready to be erected. Cause he thought he was gonna go ahead and be able to move forward with it. And so that's kind of not an option for us to adjust the building size because it would create hardship for him. So we'd like to, as presented, have the site the way it is. The other thing, option number two, which we don't really like, but we could move the building to the back as stated by one of the board members earlier. The deal is they're saying there's a 10-foot minimum setback on the rear. Well, per your ordinance, there is no rear setback. It's 0. They're requesting the 10, and the reason they're requesting the 10 is because if you do back up to a residential district, then you do have to have that 10-foot setback. But we're totally engulfed and inside the light commercial district, so there's no rear setback in that case. We wouldn't have to have a rear setback. So option number two, we could move the building back, but what that does is that creates a hardship for my client because then we have to provide an additional 25-foot worth of driveway to get to the inside of this garage part of the building. Now, the building it is, stated before, it's for office use. He does own a property just east of this lot, and so he's wanting to move his office here. And so it is office, and then, as questioned earlier, we have 8, 9, 10, to have additional space in there for some vehicle storage. Part of it is he just wants to store his RV inside there to get it out of the weather, and then when he needs to use it for whatever purpose, he can take it out of there, and then he's okay. The northeast corner is actually where the offices are located, and I have a floor plan right here if you guys needed to look at that. The reason we added those additional parking spaces, because when we did submit the plans, we were questioned about our parking spaces and the requirement that we needed to meet for it. We only needed, in parking calculations, we only needed 4 spaces total. But we were questioned because they were using the total square footage of the building, which was 2,400 square feet. So we went ahead and added the additional parking just so we'd say, okay, you're gonna use the 2,400 square foot total. We're gonna go ahead and apply the number of parking spaces based on the 2,400, which in reality, the office is only like 600, 700 square feet. So that's the reason you'd only need the 2 spaces and then the handicap space. But we went ahead and added the additional parking in there. We do meet all the requirements. It has been through building services. Everybody's checked off on it. Fire's checked off on it. The only stopping point was in planning, and planning stopped it for the replat. And then now they've stopped it for the 25-foot setback that they're asking for.
If I may add, Mr. Rico brought up a point about the section 1476K1, visual clearance and surrounding development on an adopted site plan. There is no adopted site plan for this location. The site plan he's talking about is actually what he has.
So based off of that comment there, yes, the adopted site plan is what's existing because the city had already given addresses to all the properties that are there. The other good point, and I'm glad she brought that up, is in your ordinance, when you're developing in existing parts of the city, to my understanding, typically likes to maintain what's there. That way you don't adversely affect the overall site. So if you look at the site plan in general of the whole block, the building next to us is a commercial building and it's right up there on its property line. The 2 buildings next to that building are right up on its property line. So the reason that we were wanting to put our building up on the front so we could maintain that line of sight of all those buildings and not have our building pushed back an additional 25 foot on our site. Next to that, they did, it's light commercial. Commercial buildings were torn down people purchased them and they put residential structures there. And so those individuals were required to push their residential structures back to 25 foot, which is understandable because in your ordinance, it does read that way. If it's a residential structure, it has to have a 25-foot setback. But per your ordinance, that's the other reason why it has that except. If it's a non-residential and except, and if we can approve the site plan versus visual circulation, traffic and all that good stuff, that we have the ability to say, look, yes, we can put a commercial building up to the front and not require that 25-foot setback. And that's what we're asking for.
I wanted to add something or clarify.
Go ahead.
So the parcel, it goes right here, here, to here. So this part here is not part of the parcel. So he mentioned he hasn't exceeded the 50% lot coverage. Asphalt, anything that's covered, that isn't permeable, like water can seep through. is
So let me
considered
interrupt you there,
lot
'cause
coverage.
Hold on.
So therefore, it is exceeding 50% of the property in that aspect.
so technically asphalt is permeable. It does let the water go through it. And yes, even, that's the reason why, even your interstate traffic, the water doesn't hold on the interstate. Why? Because it is permeable and it does let it run off and go off to where it needs to go. It's not gonna let it go permeable just as just vacant or dirt would, right? It's not gonna leave as fast, but asphalt is permeable.
Not all.
Yes, all of it is, because it's rock and so it is permeable, sorry.
And in addition to that, in that block, it is at 50% in where the buildings are coming to the property lot and the other ones are recessed back.
Yes, and that's actually, that's the reason why. I mean, like I said, 50/50, but it's not 50/50 commercial. 50 is commercial and the other 50 are residential. And we understand the reason why those were required to be placed further back on the lot. Because the ordinance reads that way, that if it's residential, there's no exception to it. The residential one has to be 25 foot back.
And then if you're separating the building from one building to the other one, it's supposed to be 10 feet between from the eve of the building.
So
So therefore,
based on,
you could be able to push it back to the 10-foot property line, which would leave 15 feet from the neighboring to their property, to
So-
their building.
So based off of that, as far as building construction, we could push the building all the way to the south property line and even be adjacent to that building. The only thing we'd have to do per building services is provide a 4-hour firewall between the structures. So technically, if we have to push the building all the way to the rear property line, if we get the 0 setback on that end, we can, and just provide a 4-hour firewall back there, which also creates undue burden on my client, just because, he'll pay for the firewall if we have to have it, but there's no reason for it if we're able just to leave the building where we're at.
I have a question real quick. What percentage, being that we do have easements and things along those lines, and I'm assuming that the front section of this is easement, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so property itself, what percentage of this property does the building actually take up? It's obviously more than 50%. Do we know what that is?
We would have, because I don't
No,
know what
it's,
the
it's,
back is
it's
going
less
to
than
be.
50%. Our building's only
Not-
40
not-
by 60.
I'm asking on the actual property itself. I'm
Yes.
not asking
Yes.
on,
On
I'm not
the
asking with the
site.
easements. I'm asking with where you're at here, this is more than 50%.
Yeah.
From property line to property line, it is definitely more than 50%.
No, it's
I wanna
less,
know
because
what
our
that-
building's only 40 by 60. Our lot is 5,000 square feet. So 40
But
by
the
60 is
parking
2,400.
would be paved. And I'm not sure if he's gonna pave the back of that as well.
Okay.
So they're exceeding the 50%.
Okay, the other question is drainage an issue in this area? I know sometimes in our central area downtown, drainage can be a very big problem. I get what you're saying with asphalt, I understand that technically it's permeable. you're talking to a chemical guy,
So,
and I
yeah,
understand
so there-
chemicals very
there's
well.
no, there's no drainage issues in there. We're not in a flood zone. We're not in a,
That's my question and big concern is
Yeah.
runoff, because
Yes.
asphalt's gonna absorb some, but it's not gonna absorb much.
Correct.
And it is going to tend to flow, because that's what it's designed to do.
Correct.
So where, can you speak to that for a second?
Sure, I'll be glad to. Joe Tucker with City Engineering. Yeah, on this lot, we don't see any issues with drainage. It'll just sheet flow to the existing streets, and they're designed to handle that.
Okay.
and then we are meeting the landscape ordinance. That's a requirement for new development. So we did have to introduce trees and grass and all that in there. So we are meeting all of those requirements. I mean, we're meeting everyone's requirements. This is the only holdup is the 25-foot setback that's being required. And so, and like I said, all the other departments have already signed off on it. We're just at this point here in the planning. As soon as they release it back down to building services, they would issue our permit to start construction.
So, I have a question. So you said it to the back, zero setback, push the construction all the way to the back. What kind of hardship does that create
They would have to build that firewall.
besides the firewall?
So it'd be firewall, and then we'd also, per engineering right of way, not only, engineering's only gonna be interested in from property line to back a curb, which that's already an existing driveway. But building services is gonna require us to place from that existing driveway all the way back to where that opening is for that overhead door that's there on the east side. So that's gonna be an additional 25-foot of some kind of hard surface, some kind of hard paved surface. And so if their argument is that we're already exceeding the coverage, the lot coverage, if we move it back, then we're definitely gonna be exceeding the lot coverage because we're gonna have to add an additional 25 by 25 slab so we can drive into the building.
It doesn't technically need to be the width of the whole frontage of the building, it can just be the, like how you have it in residential, you just have your walkway to your house, it's the same thing for a business. And there's different kinds of materials that they can put in between. They can do slabs, they don't need to pour the whole, runway of like I guess the entryway. They also, keep in mind, they don't need to push the building all the way back. They're choosing to do that. They can go up to the 10-foot property line.
You couldn't because there's not enough room if you look at the dimensions. Our building is 40 by 60. All we have on the rear side is from property line to our building currently, all we have is 25 foot. So if you're asking for the 25 foot on the front side, we've given 5 foot up there on the front side. So if you're asking for 25, that means we only have 5 foot that we could stay off of the back property, but we still have the 25 foot in the front. And we would need to have it 25 foot by 25 foot so we could drive into that bay door area.
So another question, clarify. REBD has already purchased the building.
They have already purchased the building. It's been sitting on site even before the replat because we'd pushed all of this through with the understanding that he was gonna be able to build. And then we got held up at the replat portion. And so we went ahead and agreed, he went ahead and paid to have it replatted. So then we went through the whole process and that took a little bit, right? It took at least about 6 months to get through the replat, actually more, maybe 6, 8 months. And there we had to discuss some issues on the replat because they were asking for some cutbacks and some other stuff that in the end weren't warranted. And so it was let go through to where we didn't have to
So
do
he
that.
purchased the building without even having the permits and everything, not knowing?
No, he had put the plans in.
We purchased the building, excuse me, we
Oh.
purchased the building.
Excuse me, sir.
Before we started the manhole. I paid $25,000 out of my pocket for a manhole that belongs to the city of Odessa now.
And what is your name?
And we've been waiting for 18 months. My name is Romeo. I'm the owner of REBD Trucking, sir.
Okay.
18 months I've been waiting. We already had the permits for the water lines, and that's why I purchased the building. And then this lady told me that I needed to replot. We replotted. We've done everything that you guys have asked us to do.
So my client is correct. We did, everything had been approved prior to, so we could move forward and we did the design. And we did get, we did have to get permits for water and sewer. to get constructed, and we were issued those permits to move forward to construct them. He did pay a utility contractor to go in and build all of that. All of that was approved, all of that was established, and so that's the reason, he's correct. That's the reason why he went ahead and purchased the building, because for the understanding, we were moving forward everything, and then just as construction is, you try to move forward on it, right? And then we were hit with these situations, but he still complied with the replat, and we did all of that stuff. And then we're told that as soon as the replat was signed, that our plans would be released so we could get our permit, because that was the final step. And then I went to the office to have the same discussion so we wouldn't have to come for a variance, because in your ordinance, there is that exception, and it opens the door to allow this to be placed where it's at. But we were told, hey, go to the variance board to seek a variance. So we agreed to that, and that's why we're here today too, to ask
So-
for the variance.
The $200 application fee, she even waived it for me.
If I may add, this issue with the property has been brought up since last year when Randy was here. Mr. Brito was aware that it needed to be replatted. He had brought in, previous, or the potential owners at the time. And we discussed that the property needed to be replatted. He was aware of this, now he, came up with Mr.
In addition to
Trevino.
that, in addition to that, they both have talked to the mayor prior to us finalizing the plat, and they were told that we were gonna move forward with the plat, but they needed to comply with all setbacks.
Who told him?
The mayor.
So to correct that, I've never spoken to the mayor about this project. My client has, but I never have, because I don't like to go up the chain of command that way, to try to get something done. I try to go through the whole process and do what we need to be doing. And then to note, I didn't want to bring up Mr. Brinley, but since you brought him up, yes, originally, my original client, we spoke to Mr. Brinley, and so to clarify that, at the time, Ms. Prieto wanted me to replat the whole block, because the whole block right now is currently in a shambles because they've been sold off. It was platted originally and they're all lots, but through the years, pieces of them got sold off by meets and bounds to different individuals, and no one ever made them replat the lot. And so at the time, she tried to push the issue of you have to fix the whole block. So we spoke to Mr. Brinley. Mr. Brinley said, no, that's overdue burden on you guys to try to get everyone together, and then who's going to pay for it all, right? So then Mr. Brinley at the time said, look, it was discussed, and he said, replat this portion of it along with the rear portion of it. And we said, well, that's the same thing as our individual on the backside. He's not interested in the replat. So then Mr. Brinley said, okay, fine. You don't have to, since there's already an address and since it's already been established, even though it has been sold off by meets and bounds, you can go ahead and proceed that way. It wasn't until further down the line when the third client came along that they pressed the issue on the replat. And then they definitely pressed the issue on the replat with my current client, and we complied and we did it. And then at the time now, they agreed, okay, you just have to plat this with the understanding that the back one actually is an illegal lot now because it doesn't meet your minimum required square footages, right? But it was deemed that that's fine. That individual doesn't want to participate in the replat. He'll never be able to remodel or adjust or do anything to that structure on that lot because, he'll never get a permit for that. He understands that, but he didn't care. He's like, that's fine. I don't want to mess with the replat. Individuals to this side of us, to the south side of us, their lots are still in shambles because they're portions of lot 8, 7, 6, and so forth, so.
No questions?
So do you have a, sorry, excuse me.
Sorry.
So how can you push his existing building back on the lot and make it work?
So option number 2, if planning will back off of the 10-foot setback that they're saying that has to happen, which it doesn't
On
because
the
your
rear you're
ordinance.
talking about?
Sir?
On the rear of the property?
Yes, sir, on the rear of the property, they're holding that 10-foot back there, but per your ordinance, there's not a required 10. Even though we show it on our site plan, we were just showing it there to say, hey, we want to stay at least 10 foot off of there, so we're not right up against the rear property line. But per your ordinance, there's not a setback required in light commercial unless we're backed up to a residential district, which we are not, because this lot right here provides us the buffer between our lot and the residential district.
Is that lot zoned residential, or is that lot zoned light commercial?
No, sir, it's zoned light commercial, and I have the map here to show it.
So, yeah, so our zoning allows for in light industrial to have residential. That doesn't mean, so you can have business and residential, that's the beauty of having
Light
that.
commercial.
But that comes with these kind of scenarios. And one of the things that we try to do is make sure that there's a protection. And usually that would be a 10-foot, separation from building to building, which they have a 5 side, or rear setback. And so if they have 5 and they go back at least 5, that would leave us with 10.
But did I hear you say earlier that none of the other commercial buildings in the area are complying with the setbacks? They all have exceptions granted as well?
Yes, the ones to the south of us are on the front property line. They're not set back 25 foot, and you can see it on.
Yeah, you can
So it's 50-50.
So what's
Some are-
marked out
But not
white on our-
residential. I understand
That's not the
residential
right
has
map. Yeah, it's
their,
not the right
what they
map.
have to comply with, but.
So there's an apartment
So the
complex and there's one-
map you have in your agenda is
Yep.
not the right map.
Yeah.
You marked it
I
further
just-
to the north, and we're way to the south.
Yeah, y'all
Yeah,
are way to
we-
the south. I already
we got that.
penciled
We got
mine in
that.
on my map, figuring that one out.
So we're here, that's a commercial building, these are commercial, these are the residential ones right here. And then up here, this is all still
me see
like
that one you
commercial, but
presented.
these are all residential also, but they're on the north side of the street. These buildings here are all commercial on the east side of it, which they're all in the same
So
district.
that's not the
but they're
the
all
white
still lot
white square is
lines
not the current
up on
square.
the front
So
side.
south.
So
14.
Which we fully understood, if we were putting a
Right
residence
there.
Right
there,
there.
then we definitely have to have the 25 foot, but since the ordinance allows us as commercial building to go to the front, then that's why we placed the building to the front. Because we would like to still have a little bit of backyard in there, even though it's a commercial building, just for some gatherings or whatnot on the backside.
But
And that's
it's
something
just
that
hard
you
to,
guys can, like, if that is something where you guys feel that it's, positive for them and we're still at least complying and you guys allow him to at least go to the 10-foot setback, so it helps them out, that's something that you guys can.
Which, we wouldn't like to push the building back. If we'd like the variance to let us leave the building where it's at, as the best option there. But if deemed necessary, we do have the option to push it further in and go back and not have to, repurchase or reorder a building. But like I said, if you're gonna hold that 25 foot up on the front, then we have to have all of it to the back.
I
What
mean,
was there before?
Before there was a commercial building there, but it was torn down prior to my client owning it. The original clients that wanted to build a house there, they bought it and the land was vacant. There was a big tree there, but the tree had been removed. But they wanted to build a tiny house at the time there. And like I said, they were pressed with the issue of the replat, so they just didn't have the funds for it, so they decided to just sell it.
But there was a commercial building there before,
Yes.
and so the existing concrete paved, existing driveway would suggest that that building did set back
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at on
further
Google Maps right
than
now.
what you're proposing. And I've heard, there's been a lot of information thrown out.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
heard, yes, there is exceptions to the 25-foot yard setback, but in the language it says adopt a site plan. And I don't think I heard that there is an adopted site plan.
So
But then
there,
I heard it was the existing condition. Well, now I'm hearing the existing condition was a commercial building that was set back. So I guess we need a little clarity on the adopted site plan.
Yeah.
What is the standard?
There isn't one.
That, right, so to me, that exception is, yes, you could do it, answer any of them on an adopted site plan. So
There's
that-
not-
it
there's
doesn't
not
seem
a
like that's been
develop-
worked through yet.
Yeah, well, there's not a developed site plan because the development was back in the fifties, sixties.
Right, but even back then, where that concrete drive, it suggests that building was even back
Yeah,
previously.
I'm looking at the Google Maps right now, we don't have it up on the screen yet, but looking at where that is and where it's either a piece of asphalt or a piece of concrete that's there,
Mm-hmm.
it's probably set back 10 foot past that building of where
Yeah,
that originally was.
I'm thinking maybe 15 feet set back from the property line, ish, give or take, so. Which would basically put this building almost right up against that 10-foot rear yard setback that's shown on this site plan.
And I don't think I have a problem with that part at all. Of going, of the 10 foot setback
On the rear.
on the rear at all. I'm concerned about visibility from the street, concerned about 14th or 13th and Lee as far as being around that. I mean, you're looking at where the tree is and looking where the asphalt is for that building, that goes back, so I mean, that would indicate to me that that had been done that way in the past.
Yeah, originally, I don't know where the building, I think the concrete had already been removed, but I think that little drive, the existing drive that was there, the building portion came further up.
Yeah.
You can kind of see where it's at, but it came probably, it was in line with the building to the south of it, but it had like a jog in there, right, to where that drive kind of moved in to that back corner of the building. Because the existing concrete, can I,
You can kind of see on the side.
but I can't point with the mouse, I can point. So, existing concrete foundation was right here, right? And it went along here, and then you can still see some of the existing concrete foundation that was back here. So that building kind of did this, and then they were using this part where the tree's at, and this part as their yard, right? But the reason the drive went in is that way you had to fully be in the property line, which is your 18 feet for your parking spaces. So that's the reason the drive goes here. But then they didn't obstruct the view of these windows on the side building. They let those windows still have a view and not be right up against the building.
So if you don't set that back where you're at now, you're gonna end up obstructing those windows as well, correct?
Well, our building's gonna block their view anyways, because we could technically go all the way to that wall and just place a firewall there, and then those windows to that existing building are null and void.
Then you're blocking ingress and egress of that building and possibly an emergency plan for fire.
Not ours, because they're not on our lot.
You're blocking theirs. That could be a safety issue.
Well, per building services, it's not, I mean, we could butt our wall right next to theirs and they could have a shared common wall. It just has to be a firewall.
Transfer the hardship to them.
And we don't transfer the hardship because on south of that building, they have access to go all the way around their building to get into the backside. So if they did catch fire, they still have a way to control that building. But we're not even proposing to go to the zero lot line there. We're leaving 2-3 feet in between our building and their building, which is, you can still walk through there. We had a bigger setback on that side. We had left 5 foot on that side, but the issue we ran across there is that our parking on this side, they were making us meet the 18-foot requirement inside the lot and not use city right of way. So that's why we shifted the building to the south an additional 3 foot to catch that 18 foot for the on-site.
And that's where
Parking.
the dilemma comes when they're non-conforming lots, they're not the lot size that there should be.
But the lot size is, because the minimum is 5,000 square foot, which we met that. The lot is 5,000 square foot. We didn't reduce the lot size.
But it's the impervious cover allowed on that, it's a percentage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And when you take into the asphalt pavement, we're exceeding the impervious cover as per code.
Are these other buildings, the other commercial businesses, not,
There's one more, it's the one that's
Okay, I
right
see.
next to it, the other one's apartment complex, and then it's houses.
do those comply with the 50% coverage?
So you have to understand, codes change. I
Okay,
don't know what
got it.
was prior to, so I don't know when those were built, so we can't base it. We have to base on the project only that's there.
Any other questions?
So we're not here to approve a site plan. We're here to improve an encroachment or reducing the setbacks.
Right.
So at what point does a site plan get reviewed and approved?
So it would be right now with you guys, so it would be, as he said, he had two options. A, he said leaving it to the property line, or B, pushing it back, and he's requesting if he can at least push it back to have the 10-foot in the back.
So I'm requesting that you approve site plan as presented. We're not up to the front, even though we requested a 0 setback on the front property line, we're not at our building's not at the 0. We're 5 foot in still. We went ahead and set our building 5 foot back. And then it leaves our site plan as presented, and then we can move forward to get our permit for construction.
And I'll do the retaining walls for the neighbor that, on the other side, where there's already the wall, I'll do the retaining wall all the way around, so I can do my building. 18 months waiting.
And so option number 2, if we move to that, then to meet your 25-foot setback, there cannot be a 10-foot setback on the back. That has to go to 0. And that's been requested that way. It has to go to 0 as allowed in light commercial. And then we move the building all the way back, and we're able to give the 25-foot up on the front side. But with that being said, that kills the backyard area of it, which, we'd like to keep the backyard area of it over there for obvious reasons, right? And then we're not impeding, the biggest deal is we're not impeding visual, we're not impeding circulation, we're not impeding the air, everything that's in the presentation here, we're not creating hardships on any of that stuff. We're not asking for a special condition that's not already established as precedents of structures that are already there. We're just trying to be in line with those structures, and that's the reason why we placed the building where we placed it. So, we're not in contrast to the public interest, because we're not creating a problem on our site by placing our building to the front.
Other than the setback.
And as he
Right.
mentioned earlier, he would like to be able to park his RV there, so that pretty much is extending.
But it's not extending it because the RV's not gonna be, that's the whole reason, we're not trying to park the RV outside. The RV's gonna be inside this building at all times. So we're not asking for additional outside space to have that thing, cause that could almost even be an eyesore if it's just a big RV parked there. And that's the reason why my client decided, here's my office, and I want the space to put the RV inside where it's not exposed to the outside, and it's parked indoors.
And his personal RV in
Yes.
his business.
Well, it's his business RV because it goes,
Oh,
it travels
for
for the
business
business
purposes.
purposes, yes. It travels for the businesses, because he does run a trucking company, and there's sometimes that not all the work's here in this area. They gotta travel, and there's times he needs to be out, in those locations. And so, that's the main reason for putting up a business RV, is to be able to.
How do the staff feel about the back setback? The reducing the back?
Well, I think what we need to keep in mind is they want to enter the back, correct me if I'm wrong. You wanna enter
No,
through the back?
we don't necessarily have to enter through the back. We did leave an overhead door back there, but that's just so we could have access to the outside. So it's a business, you're gonna have luncheons, you're gonna have different stuff like that, and that's the reason we wanna have that backyard area, because there are gonna be some barbecues at times when you invite vendors over and you wanna cater to them, feed them, do that kind of stuff, right? Small stuff. And so that's the reason for that backyard, to put some pits back there, be able to cook, be able to
So to the previous question,
Yeah, so for the previous question, if they move back to the 10 foot, that means that they're scooting back the building 20 feet instead of the 25, and I think that's reasonable. It still gives them a gathering space in the back. It still gives a good, front, setback.
yeah,
So it still won't be, here's the deal is, we push it back to the 10-foot setback. I don't know where they're getting their dimensions from, but you read the dimension right here, it's 25 foot, 1 3/4 inch from the property line.
It says 15
Two-
right there.
No, sorry, that's the 15-foot setback line from the side, the north side line, sorry. So the dimension down here is 25 foot, 1 3/4 inch from property line to the building edge. Okay, so if we push the building back to the 10-foot, I mean, the math, 25 minus 10, that's only 15 feet. So you still don't get the 20 foot, plus the 5 that we'd already pushed it back from the front. You're only gonna get 20 foot from the front setback. So we're still not gonna meet your ordinance because we're not gonna be 25 foot back.
that's 20.
That's 20.
That's 20.
20.
It's
We
20.
but we can figure that out.
Yes. Okay, any other questions? All right, I close this portion of the meeting. To the public, board members?
I
We
mean,
just drink out of a fire hose.
yeah. I am gonna say, from the Mr. Trevino standpoint, he has done everything that the city has asked him to do. He's put in a lot of money to comply with things that he has been asked to do, and he deserves an answer, so.
Most definitely.
We will get an
That's- yeah,
answer
that's
today.
where- That's where we're at.
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
where we're gonna have an answer
We're
today.
here to figure that out.
And a fair and just answer,
Most definitely.
yeah.
I'm concerned just looking at neighborhood and looking at what we've got and the fact that we're putting up a brand new building and we're building in a new structure. We need to make sure that we're focusing in on the future. Building that may be beside it, that may be the next one to go in the next couple of years kind of thing, and there may be redevelopment on that block. Obviously, the house that's at the back of that is, there's definitely, at some point, they're not gonna ever be able to remodel it, they're not gonna be able to do anything with it at some point in time. That's probably gonna go away at the same time. We need to make sure that we're focusing on the front and the front property lines more than anything with this, I do believe. Making sure that complies so that we don't have an issue going on for the next set of things. That's a big concern on my side. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
To me, it's hard to ignore the front setbacks
Mhm.
when you're driving down the road, even if it's on a corner. I'd much rather give the exception to go back
I would too.
than to move out past the setback of the neighborhood.
But
Yeah.
either way, the setback, it won't comply with the 25, right? That's what we decided.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
but it's 20.
but we're making that,
20.
but
We're
we get to
making
make that exception within this board as far as figuring out where that goes. And it gets placed. So we can say, we like this, but it needs to shift 5 foot this direction or 10 foot this direction.
And that way he still uses his building.
Because, I mean, I definitely agree, we bought a building, and modifying those that's not an easy task.
So do I have a motion?
I'd like to see it go back. I'd like to see it go back to at least the 10-foot setback line, and really, I'd like to see it hit that 25-foot setback if we can get there. I really think we need to hit that 25-foot setback, even if that's a firewall. What are y'all's thoughts?
I know, I mean, is this a motion? It's still discussion?
I think we're still
Still
discussing at
discussion.
this point.
Yeah.
Well, what he's asked for is a 0 on the front. And I don't think at this point we could support that, or I could support that.
I can't support that either.
I think there's got to be some setback on the front. I would much rather see it, like I said before, in the back. So the way this has come before us today, I would be a no.
So do we go to a property line, or do we go to a 10-foot setback line?
I would yield to those
So-
folks who
if he goes to 25 front yard.
That
se-
would be only giving them 5 feet
In the back.
in the back.
So if they go 20,
That would be 10 feet.
10, is there any objections from the city if they do that?
No, I mean, you guys, my job is to support my ordinance, so I have to go with that. So if you guys rule to go up to the 10 line, then that's the 10 line. If you guys decide it's a 5 line, that's the 5 line. I have to, stand by my code.
But if you guys are gonna,
Hold on, we,
I know it's not open for public.
yeah, but we stop that. We have to reopen it.
Can you
Hold-
reopen it?
Hold on just 1 second. Hold on just 1 second. You have a motion to reopen to the public?
Yeah, I make a motion, we reopen to the public.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Reopen to the public.
Okay, so Norberto Brito again. So I understand where you're coming from, and so if we could work that out and you're willing to adjust on that to where we're not gonna meet the setback in the front, can we go in between so we're not going so far back? So instead of pushing it back the additional 20 foot, because we're not gonna get the 25 unless you take it all the way to the property line, right? So instead of going 20, can we go the 15 and that'll push us back to your original comment where that's where the existing drive edge is at? Because you were correct. I measured it and it's 15 foot to that edge of drive. Could we go, instead of pushing it 20 foot back, can we go the 15 foot to where that edge of drive is at, existing edge of drive is at? And then that kind of floats both sides because that doesn't overbear him on having to do a 25-foot drive. That existing drive's already there and it puts us right at that opening where that overhead door's at. And all we're doing is moving our building back 10 more feet to give us that 15 foot off of that property line. And then it gives us, instead of 10-foot backyard, it gives us a 15-foot backyard back in the back. So it compromises the situation to where it's doable for both parties, city and my client. Is that an option? And then we don't have to incur the undue burden of creating firewalls either, building firewalls in there either, because we're not gonna be up against the property lines.
I feel like that's fair.
Any other questions for Mr. Brito? No?
Not at this point.
Okay, we close it. Again, board members?
I think that sounds reasonable.
Yeah, I think so. I think
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the 15-foot setback exception. Front yard, yes. Front setback.
15
15.
foot from property line? Is it 15 foot for property line or?
Oh, you have to indicate both, if you're willing to approve a 15 front yard setback or the 15 front, rear yard setback.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the 15-foot front yard setback and the 15-foot setback from the rear.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any objection? Motion carries. Do, Ms. Brito, do we have somebody for the next case?
He didn't show up. Yeah, we did notify, they didn't present.
Yeah, we
We can table this.
Yeah, we can't move forward. If we have questions and stuff, who do we ask? So do we have a motion to table?
I'll make a motion to table.
Do I have a second?
Can you indicate the case number?
Oh,
Okay,
indicate-
sorry.
Sorry.
Where's the?
right here.
Sorry. All right. I'll make a motion to table case number 2023-07V
Due to lack of.
Due to lack of presence.
due to lack of presence.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Objections? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion
There's
to,
no further business.
No further
no further
business.
business? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Objections? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a long, I've never been here so long.
They're getting tougher now, huh?
That actually was a little bit rough.